Back in 1918, these were pretty exciting pictures. The fighting men of America coming home from France. Down Fifth Avenue they marched with their brass shining and grins a mile wide. The crowds cheered and waved flags, and the doughboys home from Chateau Thierry and Belleau Wood planned on picking up their lives just where they'd left them. Only for a lot of them, it didn't work out that way. Not exactly. Some of these marching men wanted to go back to school, but discovered they didn't have the money. Others learned the jobs they'd left behind were gone, or if they were there, they didn't want them. They wanted something better. But for these returning soldiers, no legislation had been passed, nor any program mapped out to give them the break they deserved. They got medals, but 15 years later, some of these men were selling apples on street corners. Others were known contemptuously as bonus marchers.
What about this time, Mac? Are these Navy boys going to get the same sort of deal? What about this man who's fought the long, tough fight up Italy and has been knocked out? What's going to happen to him? Is it going to be the same for these GIs hitting the beach at Saipan? Or the Siegfried Line, or the Gothic Line, or any line that's needed hitting? When it's all over, is it going to be like last time for them?
No, this time it's going to be different.
Yeah? What makes you so sure?
Because in Washington, there were a group of congressmen with long memories who were in the last war. They knew that when a man gets out of the Army or Navy or Marines, he's worried most about a job, an education, and a home. And that's why Congress, led by the President, passed the law, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, better known as the GI Bill of Rights. And to make sure it works, a Veterans Administration is already busy in Washington with General Frank Hines in charge.
Sounds all right. Sounds great, in fact. But I'm from Missouri. You got to show me, brother.
Happy to. Let's take a typical example. We'll call this corporal who saw action in Italy Vic Jones. Here he's signing his name to one of the most important documents of his career, his honorable discharge. After that, he bucks his last GI line to get his mustering out pay.
Everybody get the same pay?
No. The amount depends on the length of a man's service. $100 for the man who's only worn a uniform 2 months. $200 for the GIs who served here in the States more than 60 days. And $300 for the soldier who's been overseas, like Jones. He gets $100 now, another $100 in a month, and the last $100 in 2 months. Pretty nice, huh? After all, $100 is a lot of bucks.
I'm not complaining, so far. But changing over from a GI to a civilian costs money. By the time a guy has bought himself a new outfit and looked around, trying to remember his saluting days are over, most of his dough is pretty well shot. What happens then?
That's where the GI Bill of Rights comes in. Jones, by law, like every discharged soldier, must report back to his draft board. There, if he wants his old job back, he finds out if he's eligible and how to go about it.
But suppose his ex-boss doesn't want to give him back his old job.
If necessary, the local draft board will get the United States attorney to go to bat for the corporal at no cost. And his ex-boss will have to rehire him for at least a year. If not at his old job, then one with equivalent seniority, status, and pay.
Not bad, not bad. But what about the guy who was unemployed before he entered the Army? And what about a guy like Jones here who wants a better job than when he went in?
The United States Employment Service has 1,500 offices throughout the country with a special Veterans Employment Representative to assist ex-soldiers in finding the right job.
But what if the right job doesn't turn up so fast and he's unemployed for a while?
Then, like Tabor here, who's eligible, he receives unemployment insurance, $20 a week up to a maximum of 1 year, depending on his length of service. Or take the case of a man like Albert Falk, who goes into his own business after he's discharged. If things are a little slow in getting started, and he's earning less than $100 a month, then through the GI Bill of Rights, he receives a check each month, making up the difference.
You said something about an education. What about a man like Sergeant Brown here, who's just been let out? Before the Army got him, he was going to school. Now he'd like to go back.
Veterans Administration offices have been set up in every state, and it's here the ex-soldier goes if he wants to continue his education under the GI Bill of Rights. All he has to do when interviewed is prove that he was not over 25 when he entered the service, or show that his education was interrupted.
You mean he can get any kind of education he wants?
Now you're getting the idea. Any kind of education, and in any part of the country. High school, trade school, college, university. The ex-sergeant, after consulting the Veterans Administration, decides he wants to go to New York University. And here he calls on the registrar, who also serves as a veterans advisor. Brown tells the registrar what he'd like to do, and the courses he'd like to study. Then...
Don't tell me I know. The GI Bill of Rights looks after the money end, too.
That's right. Tuition is taken care of, funds are provided for laboratory fees, books, supplies, and equipment are included. Through the GI Bill of Rights, the government pays Sergeant Brown's school up to $500 a year, while Brown gets $50 a month for subsistence. If he were married, he gets $75.
For how long?
Depending on the length of service. A veteran can go to school from 1 to 4 years. And if the ex-soldier has already completed college and wants to take a postgraduate course, such as law, there's nothing to stop him. Oh, yes, one more point. Every soldier or sailor should remember that refresher and retraining courses are open to everyone regardless of age. If a man wants to, he can brush up on his training or plan to take new courses. Nice house, isn't it?
Sure, it's nice. And if I'm lucky, after I get out, in 5 or 10 years, I'll have one pretty much like it.
Well, George Tobin, just driving in, didn't have to wait any 5 or 10 years. As soon as he got out of the Navy, he applied to the Director of Finance, Veterans Administration in Washington. And they were able to help him get a loan by guaranteeing it up to $2,000. Of course, George, like every veteran, had to meet certain conditions, prove he was a reliable citizen. But he was able to do that all right.
I guess I was all wrong about it being like last time. But wait a second. What about the beautiful blonde? Don't tell me the GI Bill of Rights guarantees every returning serviceman one of those, too.
No, that's still up to the veteran. Just as it's up to him to take advantage of the GI Bill of Rights and not expect the government to come after him. The GI Bill of Rights is not a reward or a handout or a gravy train, but rather an American way to make it easier for each man to take his place once again in the community and get some of those things for which he went to war. A job, a business, an education, a home.